Welcome to Search for Truth Reality. My name is Walter Noasad. What you're about to see here is an interview that I shot on January 20th of 2012 with Anthony Sanchez. I learned about Anthony Sanchez through Project Camelot, a recorded telephone conversation between Carrie Cassidy and Anthony. And Anthony had an experience in Dulce, New Mexico that had involved himself being poisoned somehow, some way. He today still doesn't fully understand how that happened, but this is what inspired me to go see him and to put a camera in front of him. The purpose of recording the interview was to capture his story and incorporate with a lot of other stories I've collected over the years for the use of my TV show that was called Search for Truth, Internet Chatter and Claims Investigated. We've since decided not to pursue pitching that show anymore, at least very actively, because it just, quite frankly, hasn't gotten any traction, and the data I have is getting a bit old, and some of it I've lost through hardware failures, hard drive crashes and such. Anyhow, I now have the go-ahead to make those interviews public, whatever remains of them public. So rather than just kind of willy-nilly throw them out there onto the internet, especially in this case, and I've befriended Anthony, I thought I'd give him a call and say, hey, look, dude, that interview we shot in 2012, I'd like to go ahead and put that out there on the internet. He did have some reservations about that because it was so close. I mean, literally within a few months of him having been poisoned. And you could see it. You can see it on his face, and he was pretty self-conscious about it. I said, look, you look good, actually. It looks really good, and I think it would be nice to go ahead and get that stuff out there. He agreed. He said, yeah, go ahead, but provisionally. And that being, he wanted me to let you know that he's feeling self-conscious about his appearance. So when you look at this video, you'll see it on his face. You'll see the effect that the poison had. He has a little sagging on the left side of his face, and he describes how the poison had affected him, and that his doctors couldn't even identify the neurotoxin that attacked him. So anyhow, Anthony Sanchez, he's a software engineer. He's a UFO researcher and author of this book entitled UFO Highway. This is a great book. I read this in one sitting. If you want to learn more about Anthony Sanchez, you can go to his website at www.ufohighway.com. I want to urge you to watch this video to the end. Right around about the last 8 to 10 minutes is pretty interesting story. We, in the course of our interview, got to a point where we had wrapped, we're shutting everything down, turning off the lights, and Anthony said, oh, hang on a second, there's one more thing I want to share with you, and that bit comes at the end of the interview. You'll definitely want to look at that. It's very telling about how there are certain groups out there that are doing their best to thwart the truth from coming out, and he tells a very personal story about the activities that are taking place in that department. Anyhow, I want to thank you all for watching this interview of Anthony Sanchez. For my new subscribers, I say welcome. For everybody else, please like, please share, and hit that support button, send a few coins my way, and I can do more of these types of interviews. Until then, here we go with this interview from January 20th, 2012, Anthony Sanchez.
My name is Anthony F. Sanchez, and I'm a software engineer. I'm the first UFO researcher to discover illegally placed U.S. government property atop the Archuleta Mesa, which is in Dulce, New Mexico. I was there in October of 2011, and I found steel-grade metal shipping containers for F-5 jet engines, which were covering air shafts, which we thought were like ventilation system, part of a ventilation system. During that trip, I succumbed to some type of a neurotoxin poisoning, which has left me paralyzed from the left shoulder up to the top of my left head, just the left side. It's not Bell's palsy like they originally thought. I've had specialists from UC Davis Medical, Sutter Medical Foundation. They still can't figure out what's wrong with me. They looked at my blood. I've succumbed to a battery of blood tests, and they said there's definitely some type of a neurotoxin poisoning, but they can't identify the chemical signature just yet. If it had been a commercial pesticide, they would have been able to identify the chemical signature, but they can't. So, but that's my claim. That's what people most know me for right now, is that I I've been doing a lot of research in Dulce. I have a lot of friends in Dulce, New Mexico, members of the Jicarilla Apache tribe who trust me and work with me implicitly on this because they know that I'm onto something. The closest I came to working with the government was in the early 2000s. I worked at the California Highway Patrol as a senior software analyst, and I worked on 2 projects. One of them was CIVIS, the California Commercial Vehicle Inspection System. After 9/11, they started checking for contraband on all of the truck stops on the freeways, all the 58, 52, I don't know, some 50-something counties in California. During that same time, I was doing work with the federal government via the CHP. I was working in tandem with Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory in developing databases for C-Vision. This is another project that they were working on. It's the Commercial Vehicle Inspection System Network. And that was that allowed me to gain access to some pretty high-profile, databases as part of the federal system, and some classified information as well. But just had to do more with 9/11 and searching for contraband, not other areas. I had a couple experiences when I was young. About the time when I was 11 years old, I had my first UFO experience in Point Reyes. I went on a camping trip with some friends whose older brothers and cousins were from San Jose State, and they wanted all of us to get together. And I seen something floating over the water, which was strange, and I couldn't explain it at the time to anybody. It appeared to be an orb. It appeared to be like a glowing orb, but probably the experience that really triggered this whole interest in UFOs for me was one evening I was driving back from Candlestick Park with my father. Well, my dad was driving. I had to have been 11 or 12 at the time. This is all around the same time. I don't know if there's a connection or not, but we were passing Hangar 1 in Moffett Field in Mountain View, California, and from the freeway, the doors at Hangar 1 were open, and they were wide open. And we saw this massive disc. We saw a massive disc hovering just outside the doors of Hangar 1. And there was like this purplish light emitting from the sides. And beneath it, you could see all the people standing in front of the door. There was lighting coming from Hangar 1, and you could see the silhouettes of all the individuals out there. My dad, I remember him pointing and saying, "Look," and everybody in the car. It was me, my dad, and my uncle, and my little brother was asleep. We all looked in amazement, and everyone on the freeway started to slow down. My dad, everybody started to slow down because they all saw it. Everybody saw it. And it was just an amazing thing to see. And I remember while we were looking at this disc, it just vanished. It just disappeared. You didn't see it, take off or anything. It just disappeared. And there was like this haze, this like a vapor or something, and there was a lot of it, and you could see everybody that was on the ground level, get in their vehicles. Some of them ran back into the hangar, and others were just taking off. Something was going on. I remember my dad saying, "I wonder if there's going to be something in the San Jose Mercury News the next morning." And my uncle was like, "You're crazy. They're not going to talk about this." And we never did find out what that was. We never did. In 2007, I was working at a semiconductor firm here in Northern California, a very well-known semiconductor firm. And I met an individual at that time who was part of the technician corps. I worked in the validation test center. Well, we took integrated circuits and we loaded them on these test machines, some of them, $5 million machines to $30 million machines, depending on the type of circuitry that was being tested. Well, I was part of the software contingent, software engineering contingent. I would, develop these applications for metrics to calculate metrics. The technicians ran the lab. One of the technicians that I met there, he just seemed out of place. This guy just seemed out of place. He was very well educated. He was far more educated than anybody else as part of the technician corps. I mean, the guy had a master's degree in computer science, and he was just it just didn't make sense that why he was there with these other people, 4-year degrees. Some of them even had 2-year degrees just to operate these machines. I got to know him, and we ended up having dinner, lunch a couple of times, because my relationship with him was based on when I was in the lab. Then it escalated to outside of the lab because we had a lot in common. We began talking about my blog. I had a really popular blog there at the company where I worked at. It was on aliens and UFOs and ancient aliens, all these topics. And he started asking me questions about government conspiracies. And I really didn't hit too much on government conspiracy at that time. I was more focused on the historical aspect, delving into the religious aspect. I had a section in my blog that I was working on called Human Origins, where I looked at the works of Jicarilla Apache Nation and even Lloyd Pye, a bunch of people. One day in particular, we were at this Filipino restaurant having lunch. And he starts telling me about, projects that he's aware of, government projects and black ops type things, black projects, black budgeted projects. And it just, everything that he was telling me at that lunch was kind of like, wow, he has a lot of inside knowledge. He really knows a lot about this stuff. And that was it. That was the last time I had seen him. I came into work the next day. He wasn't there. The following week, when I realized, wow, he was gone, all of his personal effects, everything that he had was still in his cubicle. At this company, everybody has a cubicle. There are no offices. And in his cube, there was, there was just all of his personal effects still there. I inquired with management. I said, is he sick? And they said, no, he's gone. He just left. A year later, this is in June of 2008. A year later, I get a phone call at 1 o'clock in the morning. And it's this guy. And I'm like, whoa, where have you been? And he tells me that he was AWOL from a federal project at Lockheed Martin Company. He had been a contractor hired by Lockheed Martin to work on this classified project. It was a multifaceted weapon system called LEONID, which stands for Low Earth Orbit Nanosatellite Interceptor Defense. It's a very, very high-level, highly classified project. There are multiple interests from the military-industrial complex working there. You have Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, and surprisingly, Hitachi Ltd. Out of Japan. And he went on to describe that project to me in detail. And that evening, he wanted me to meet with him in person. He was obviously terrified on the phone when we spoke. I ended up driving from Rocklin, California, all the way down to Mountain View, California. We met outside of an abandoned McDonald's in Moffett Field. It was so surreal. We're meeting outside of a recently abandoned McDonald's. I remember there being trucks. There was these trucks parked everywhere, and they had these canisters, like these metal canisters with like yellow tape on them. I later on came to find that McDonald's was repurposed for this team that was using this $300,000 camera to look at highly classified Apollo footage from 40 years earlier, from the Apollo missions. But it had nothing to do with the reason why we were meeting there. The reason why we were meeting in that parking lot was because one of his closest friends, who was a fellow engineer also working on this classified project, supposedly had shot himself in the head in his car in the very spot that we were parked at. He went on to tell me that a lot of the engineers working in the LEONID program have gone missing or have committed suicide. The pattern was that these engineers had conscientious objections to this LEONID project. What they were objecting to is that LEONID utilizes artificial intelligence. It's a multifaceted weapon system. There's multiple components. There's these drone components. There's these nanosatellite components. There's this parent satellite component. Then there's this ground-based, terrestrial-based system that operates the entire system. He said that these engineers had calculated that there was a 30% probability that LEONID could make its own decisions, ignore terrestrial commands, and become some type of a self-governing, autonomous nightmare. And tests had already confirmed this, simulations. And they were objecting to this. And the powers that be said, no, we're moving forward with this. Well, the reason why they were developing this was to combat some future space war to be conducted with the Chinese. They know that the Chinese, it gets very complex from this point. But what he told me was that the Chinese are facilitating some type of a mass landing event at the end of 2012. Whether it's a false flag event or a real mass landing ET event, I don't know at this point. I make my own opinions based on the data that's been provided to me. But at the end of 2012, there's supposed to be some mass landing event. This is where it gets really interesting. In my book, UFO Highway, I really can't delve into that book too much for legal reasons. But there's one piece of it that came out of it, which was this individual who worked at a Southern California aerospace firm. He claims to have worked in this facility where there's a vault. It's a redundant facility. He worked in this tertiary facility. There's a primary facility, which is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and then there's a secondary facility, which is also in Southern California. And he provided us with so much information. We vetted him. The guy is real. I even have his FAA license, his home address. I know that his father was a CIA asset at one time. The guy is real. The people from Project Camelot also vetted him. We had people down there taking photographs of the building. We know that it's there. We know that it exists. We called the number that he gave to us. Said, call this number, verify whether I'm not here or actually here. This is the real deal. He claims that in this vault that he works at, 6-month intervals, every few years as a volunteer. However, he's making $2,000 an hour as a volunteer, and he's under tremendous amounts of, contractual paperwork to keep his mouth shut. In that vault is every piece of documentary evidence between the United States government and aliens or ETs. Video footage, film footage, paperwork, classified paperwork from the 40s and 50s and 60s, leading all the way up to today. Even information that came out of Dulce in the 1980s and 1990s that ended up there. This individual claims to have seen paperwork, a classified document that stated that there was supposed to be some type of mass landing event occurring at the end of 2012. Whether it was false flag or real, he didn't disclose that. But he says that the federal government is well aware of this and that it's outside of their control. You have to remember that there's this pyramid structure. At the very top is this 1% group of elitists. This would be your New World Order Illuminatis running the planet. At the very bottom is the government. The government is just placed there to make us feel like there's somebody in control that we can be accountable, who can be accountable to us. They're not accountable to anybody. And they know that this is going to happen. So, back to the other part of the story, Leonid is supposedly being developed to mitigate whatever is going to happen at the end of 2012. The Chinese have a heavy involvement. In 2007, they shot down an aging satellite, an aging weather satellite. And why did they do that? They did that as a direct response to Leonid to show that they can take satellites out of low Earth orbit if they want to, should they want to, because they know what we're developing. The most controversial aspect to Leonid is these constellations. They refer to them as swarms. It's thousands of nanosatellites that are in low Earth orbit. If you haven't been paying attention, the Air Force recently developed a scale model of the space shuttle. However, it is an unmanned orbital vehicle. It's the X-37B. Why has it been up in space for 287 days straight? I was sent, my source, this guy that I'm telling you about, told me, you need to go to Beale Air Force Base on a specific date. I did. I went there. This was in June of 2011. What I didn't know was that days earlier there were a brand new set of unmanned orbital vehicles, drones, for low Earth orbit, leaving Edwards Air Force Base, and they were going to re-enter at Bill, and they did. I saw them, and I've been harassed ever since. These drones are part of that entire Leonid system. They're called interceptor drones. I don't have the exact technical details on them, or their designation. I do have details on their design, but not their designation. I don't know what they're truly called yet. I have a book called Project LEONID that's coming out, and I'm trying to compile as much information as I can now, because this information needs to get out to the people. So there's something going on, and we need to know more, and I'm researching as best as I possibly can and physically can, now that I'm succumbing to this physical, attack by somebody. I've been harassed by AFOSI at Bill Air Force Base. At least that's who they said they were. I believe it is who they were. Terrified me and my children. I had been up to Bill Air Force Base. I was given information from my source, who told me, go to Bill, you're going to see something on this evening. Sure enough, I went there. We had no phones, no two-way radios, nothing. My car at the time had no plates. I don't know how they know I was up there. We were 1 mile away from the actual property, Bill Air Force, U.S. Air Force property. But the very next day, I'm visited by these individuals asking me, what did I see? What was I filming? Was I filming? Do I have any equipment? They were not nice. They were not nice at all. And again, they were not nice. My kids were not sure what the heck was going on. The visit didn't last too long, 30 minutes tops, but they made their point clear. But they don't know who I am. I went back again when I was told there was going to be something else. I tried to go to a different area this time. And somehow they knew that I was there again. Am I being surveilled? I don't know. Maybe anybody who goes to Bill Air Force Base on the periphery of the property is being surveilled. But I had to have been followed that first time. Like I'm telling you, I had no plates on my car at that time. I hadn't received them yet. It was a brand new car. After my second visit, this time they were very forceful, and they demanded, to know what I was doing there. And I said, I was just, stargazing, looking up at the sky, watching the airplanes. We weren't doing anything. They were threatening this time. The second time around, they were very threatening. And they said, I'd better not go back there. And they demanded that I give them equipment. I said, you don't have a warrant. You don't have any right for, any of the equipment I have. It doesn't matter because they ended up breaking into my house anyway. They stole a 500 gigabyte hard drive, which had all of my footage from those 2 trips. They knew what they were looking for. A couple of SAN disks were disappeared. A couple of external USB drives were gone. All this stuff came back to me completely wiped out in the mail. Right there in front of my door. I don't know if UPS or the USPS, I don't know who, but it was shipped back to me. So I showed the case had ripped open. I took photographs of that. I have all that. But yeah, so I had been planning to drive to Phoenix, Arizona. I was going to meet with a group up there, and this Open Minds group. And they're like UFO researchers and whatnot. And I just couldn't conduct business with these guys. I was terrified. I was under high levels of anxiety. You could ask Michael Schratt. You could ask any of the people there. I just was not myself. There was no way I could sit down with them and talk about anything. My mind was elsewhere. I was very fearful. And to this day, I still feel that I'm being surveilled. I just spoke with the Project Camelot folks, Carrie Cassidy in particular, to let her know recently there was somebody installing something on the top of my house. I live in a condominium complex. Okay, there are other people there. But in the 6 years that I've been there, I've never seen anyone install anything on top of anyone's house, not even a satellite dish. They're not allowed to put them on top of the house. These individuals, normally there's a certain type of person that works doing the maintenance works, and I'm not going to be politically incorrect or whatever. these guys were clean cut, wearing U.S. Air Force issued military boots, sand-colored boots, the same exact ones they wear at Mule Air Force Base. And they were wearing jeans and like University of Michigan sweatshirts. There was just something not right about these guys. And what they were doing on my house, I don't know, but I filmed it. I didn't dare ask any questions. I was fearful. I've been very fearful ever since the summer events with the FOSI. And but when I went up there, on the other side and used my camera to zoom in, I can't see anything. I don't know what they did. I'm going to have to hire a professional to come over and detect if there's anything there. Interestingly enough, they installed it directly above my office where I do all of my work, where I conduct all of my phone calls. So, yeah, I mean, it's surreal. Inadvertently, in Dulce, I thought that I had succumbed to some type of a neurotoxin by touching the military equipment that we found atop the mesa. Later on, I come to realize that that couldn't have been it, because my partner from Sacramento MUFON, Ric Prestel, had also handled the equipment up there, and he didn't get sick. My hope is that I would be remembered for, at least in this community, for having, discovered important information and helped the people of the Jicarilla Apache tribe. Unfortunately, they succumb to some of the highest levels of carcinogens and cancer rates in the country. And most people are not aware of this. There's the belief that there's a lot of toxic elements being deposited from these underground facilities in and around the Apache Reservation. There's also the potential that there are human rights violations being occurred there in Dulce in these facilities. So if I could do anything to help expose that, I would hope that would be my legacy. They had better be. We're seeing too many levels of disclosure as a part of the controlled mass media. The major networks, major radio. We're hearing, and particularly television, in movies coming out of Hollywood and the television, and it goes beyond the media, though. If you look at the Vatican, making these claims that if there are aliens, they should be baptized, that's radical. That's radical. When you look at the United Nations accidentally releasing the information on this Malaysian physicist who was going to be appointed as the special liaison for these, or ambassador for extraterrestrials, should they come, and then retract the information, you better be paying attention, because something's going on. Something is going on. One of the things I want people to know is that they really need to look at mankind's history, in particularly our religions, not just Christianity, but Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and you will find signs that point to one thing. Each and every one of these religions has a connection, and it's not, some theological aspect of it. It's a physical aspect of it. If you look into the writings of all these great religions, you're going to find connections to extraterrestrials. You're going to find that Ezekiel's will essentially was a UFO. You're going to find that a lot of the stories that come out of Islam refer to certain individuals, who I will not say because I don't want to get killed, flying and whatnot. All these religions, have this connection. There is definitely an off-planet, off-world connection. If you look at the great artwork coming out of Renaissance Europe, the Byzantine era even, you're going to find clues. You're going to see UFOs, you're going to see, beams of light emanating from dish-shaped objects. What were they trying to tell us? What did the Council of Nicaea choose to suppress so that they can begin this level of control over humanity? There are 1 billion Christians in this world. Catholics, 1 billion Catholics in this world. That's 1 billion people under the control of one tiny group, the Vatican. What are in the archives of the Vatican? What information did they extract? Well, with the advent of the internet, with the advent of mass communications, people around the globe can communicate now. And we now know that, there's the Book of Enoch, there's the Book of Giants, there's the Dead Sea Scrolls that have all these hidden gospels that were extracted from our view. We're no longer allowed to, within the Christian community, we're no longer allowed to know about certain parts of our history, which relate back to earlier civilizations, which are just the retelling of the same stories over and over. The Epic of Gilgamesh is the same story as Noah, out of the Atrahasis into the Old Testament. It's the same thing over and over. When you look at the opening verses of the Bible, it literally tells you that the daughters of man, were, essentially had intercourse with aliens. If you look at it, if you look at it from that perspective, I don't remember the exact verse, the exact quote from the Bible, but I think it was the daughter. I don't remember the quote. I'm sorry, but yeah, even the Bible, will tell you, if you look close enough, that there's something bigger, much bigger going on, and the Orthodox Ethiopians, for instance, for centuries, had a Bible that they had, used as the center point, the focal point of their entire Christian belief. And in that was the Book of Enoch. And you can't have two competing Jesuses. You can't have two competing people that ascended to heaven and they came back under the graces of God. That's one of the reasons why they took out the Book of Enoch from the Christian Gospels as we know them. But it's more than that, because in the Book of Enoch, you also learn that there were these fallen angels. And these fallen angels correlate back to earlier civilizations, stories, allegories from earlier civilizations that tell us that these were otherworldly beings. Angelics, if you want to call them, but otherworldly beings. ETs, visitors, the Anunnaki. And what did they do? They genetically modified us to become what we are today, modern human. Try and look in the fossilized, try and find a modern human in the fossilized record, between 250,000 years ago and 3 million years before that. You won't find it. You won't find it. You're going to find different levels of, human-like creatures, but you will not find modern human prior to that. Why is that? Because we were created. If you look at the mitochondrial Eve theory, we all came out of Africa some 250,000 to 300,000 years ago, upright, highly intelligent, and we started to go across the planet. You got to take a good look at that again. There are many geneticists across the United States, across Europe, Asia, who will tell you that the evidence is there. There was a artificial splicing that occurred in our genome, and the telltale evidence is still there. Lloyd Pye is an amazing guy, and a lot of people don't give him credit. You really got to pay attention to his work. The evidence is there. I have a section in my book called Human Origins, and I try to synthesize data for as many researchers as I can to plainly and intelligently and concisely give you the answer that you're seeking with respects to why is it that we are so intelligent and so different from any other species on the planet. Why is it in the past 100 years alone we have succumbed to this augmentation and this elevated level of intelligence that no other species has? There's a bigger picture here. We were created for a purpose. That's what I'd like to tell people. There are so many differing opinions on the end of 2012 and what's going to happen to humanity. I don't know what's going to happen. My personal belief is that at the end of 2012, we're going to witness the execution phase of the beginning of the end. There are so many geopolitical events occurring across the planet right now. There's a financial impact, economic impact on all of us. Strangely enough, economics seems to be the driving factor behind all of the world's ills. I think that at the end of 2012, should there be some type of arrival event, I think you're going to see us put all of these preconceived notions of how the world should be governed and how economics should be how economics should be should factor the way we live on this planet. I think people are going to, if there's going to be an arrival event, I think people are going to put all of that aside and they're going to focus on who the hell these people are, what they want from us, and what's next. What's next for us? I don't have the answers. I'm just a little researcher, amongst my colleagues, peers, trying to get these answers. And my feeling is that we could be witness to a nightmare reality if we don't play our cards right. So this is one of the stranger stories that I have. In May of 2010, I started conducting investigations into this whole Dulce phenomena. I really wasn't into the Dulce story, that whole paradigm, coming out of Dulce, because I wasn't really a follower of that information because it just wasn't believable to me at the time. And but things changed, and I reached out to the local MUFON group here in Sacramento. I needed to meet with somebody who could put me in touch with other researchers who had far more experience, field experience, and research experience than I had. And I only spoke to this one individual. Her name was Cynthia Siegel. She was the state section director for MUFON. And she invited me to one of her group meetings. And we were actually going to meet before her group meeting took place. It was in a public place. It was in a public place, and we were going to meet there. I arrive, we meet, and she's really intrigued with the information that I have. She wants to meet further after the event. There was some guy speaking there that day. The place was like half empty. The restaurant was like half empty. It was a meeting room in a restaurant. I'm sitting at this one table, and this guy walks in with this fedora hat, big white beard, and obviously nobody there knew who he was. Nobody knew who he was. There were empty tables everywhere, and he chose to sit at my table. Which I thought was a little strange because these were small tables. It was kind of an intimate setting. I was like, wow, why didn't he get his own table? Anyway, during the speech, this guy's presentation, he starts badgering me with questions. He starts, so what are you doing here? And how long have you been investigating? Number one, how did he know I was an investigator? There was just, right off the bat, I did not have a good feeling about this guy. I could see Cynthia out of the corner of her eye looking at the two of us suspiciously. She knew something was not right. This guy was so persistent about, befriending me. And the next thing I know, I'm at this level of frustration with the guy. I want him to go away, but I give him my information. I say, I have a website. Check out this website. I'm not making any of this public to anybody. This guy gets my information and he posts it all over the internet, making me public. He's outing me in the middle of my research. And I talked to Cynthia about this, and she said, it's funny, but he tried to commandeer my MUFON website. He tried to commandeer the MUFON website, and we now believe was to see if any of the work that I was doing was related to what she was doing, if there was anything there, potentially. The guy was after my data. He was after me. But what happened was he posted all my information without my permission. He fabricated emails saying that I gave him permission. He made these crazy allegations. And he took my data, and he has been insistent on working against me, trying to prove me to be some type of a hoaxer. I filed a standard Form 180 with the National Personnel Records Center to get a DD-214 document. for this individual that I was interviewing. He's gone out of his way to take that document and try and prove it to be a hoax. What he did was he took a federal document, a document that had been given to us, part of the Military Personnel Center, and he went back to the federal government and he said, can you validate this data? On that document, it literally says that there's an underground facility in northern New Mexico, highly classified. This individual operated there under the designation of intelligence. Do you think that the federal government is going to say, yes, there's an underground facility in northern New Mexico where we operate in collusion with gray aliens, and you have individuals working for proxy governments? Do you think that they're going to tell you that? Well, this individual has gone out of his way to make me look like some type of a hoaxer. I'm telling you. They're going out of their way to do this not only to me, but so many UFO researchers and alien researchers out there, people that delve into exopolitics. I'm sorry, but everybody is succumbing to these secret individuals, these little mysterious individuals that show up out of nowhere. I've been a developer for the past 20 years, a software engineer. I worked in Silicon Valley. I was born in Silicon Valley. I was the first corporate webmaster for 3Com. I worked for a year at a high level engineering capacity for Netscape, and I spent many years at Intel Corporation in both a business intelligence and scientific capacity development software. I have friends. And I have a friend who works at a particular website. I'm not going to say his name, but I'll tell you where he works. He works at a company called PayPal. Doing a little research, we found out that the Air Force deposited $10,000 into the PayPal account of this individual who's conducting this investigation to discredit me. What do you have to say about that? What do you think about that? It tells you that there are people out there getting paid by the government to discredit others. My information touches on some pretty controversial stuff. I don't just work on Dulce. I also work on Cabazon Wackenhut right here in California, where there's another underground facility where there's a lot of toxic materials being, you got to keep in mind, these are Indian reservations. What happens on these Indian reservations, it's at the discretion of the tribal council, not the United States federal government. These are sovereign countries. These are their own countries. They don't have to answer to local authorities, federal authorities, state authorities. On many levels. So, again, this is why you see a lot happening on Indian reservations, and this is why you see the federal government, who's operating collusion with who's ever there, paying individuals. If you go to this guy's website, it's click here, PayPal here, give me money here, donate here, help me here, this, that. It's like, if you go to my website, you don't see anything like that. Because I'm not in this to make money. I'm in this to find the truth. And that's what sets me apart from these other so-called serious UFO investigators who we know are being paid off by the federal government, the military-industrial complex, to shut people like me down.